September 15th, 1940, 2:14 p.m., 22,000 feet above the Kent coastline. The world is not blue and green. Up here, right now, it is a blur of grey smoke, tracers, and the terrifying, shrieked roar of a Rolls Royce Merlin engine pushed past its red line. You are strapped into a metal coffin that vibrates so violently your teeth rattle in your skull. The smell is singular, a mix of high-octane aviation fuel, hot oil, and the copper tang of your own adrenaline. Squadron Leader James. Jimmy. Johnson doesn't have time to be afraid. He pulls the stick back, forcing his Supermarine Spitfire Mk I into a punishing vertical climb. Gravity slams him into his seat. The G-force drains the blood from his head, narrowing his vision to a tunnel. Thud, thud, thud. It's a sound every pilot in the RAF dreads. Not the engine, not the wind. It's the sound of cannon shells walking across the fuselage. Behind him, diving out of the sun, is a Messerschmitt Bf 109. The yellow nose of the German fighter looms, large in Johnson's rearview mirror, growing with terrifying speed. The Luftwaffe pilot has the energy advantage, the altitude and the angle. Johnson kicks the rudder hard left. The Spitfire, usually as graceful as a dancer, protests. The airframe groans under the stress. He is trying to spoil the German's aim to turn inside the dive, but the sky is thick with metal. Then it happens. A catastrophic impact. It feels less like being shot and more like being hit by a freight train. The entire aircraft lurches violently to the starboard side. The noise is deafening. A tearing, screeching rip of duralumin and canvas. The cockpit fills with smoke. The instrument panel flickers and dies. Johnson wrestles the control column with both hands, his knuckles white inside his leather gloves. The stick is fighting him, jerking wildly, trying to flip the aircraft into an uncontrollable spin that will end in a smoking crater in the English countryside below. He looks out to his right, where the graceful, elliptical curve of the Spitfire's wing should be. There is a jagged, smoking ruin. A 29mm cannon shell has detonated directly inside the wing structure. The aileron is hanging by a thread of twisted metal. A massive chunk of the trailing edge is simply gone. By all laws of aerodynamics, this plane should not be flying. It should be tumbling. Mayday! Mayday! Red Leader, I'm hit! Heavy damage! Johnson shouts into his oxygen mask, his voice strained against the G-forces. Static is his only answer. The radio is dead. The vibration is getting worse. It's a bone-shaking shudder that threatens to tear the engine mounts apart. The Spitfire is bleeding speed, dropping like a stone. The altimeter unwinds rapidly 18,000 feet. 16,000 feet. Standard procedure is clear. Slide back the canopy. Release the harness. Roll the aircraft over. Bail out. Live to fight another day. The RAF needs pilots more than it needs planes. Johnson's hand moves to the canopy release. His fingers brush the cold metal. He looks down at the rolling green fields of Kent, offering a soft landing for a parachute. But then, his eyes dart to the floor of the cockpit, just beneath his right knee. Bolted securely to the frame is a heavily modified black steel canister. It's not standard issue. It connects to a prototype sensor array wired through the wings. The very wings that are currently disintegrating. This isn't just a fighter. Today, Jimmy Johnson is a mule. Inside that canister is vital, raw telemetry data captured during the skirmish, new frequency readings on the German WWII radar systems, intelligence gathered during a daring, low-level sweep moments before the dogfight began. If this canister survives, RAF Fighter Command can calibrate their detection systems to spot the Luftwaffe raids minutes earlier. Minutes that mean the difference between interception and annihilation. Minutes that save thousands of lives in London. If he bails out, the plane crashes. The canister is destroyed. The intelligence is lost. He looks back at the shredded wing. The hole is the size of a manhole cover. Smoke is trailing in a thick, black ribbon behind him. The Messerschmitt is circling back. The Predator smells blood. The German pilot knows the Spitfire is crippled. He's coming around for the kill shot, taking his time to line up the deflection. Johnson pulls his hand away from the canopy release. "Not today," he whispers. He slams the throttle forward. The Merlin engine screams in protest, spitting flames from the exhaust stacks. He needs speed. Speed is life. Without the lift from the right wing, he has to use raw thrust and aggressive rudder input to keep the plane level. He is flying a brick. A burning, asymmetrical brick. The German fighter dives again. Tracers zip past the canopy, bright, deadly lines of light. Zip, zip, crack. One punches through the tail section. Johnson does the unthinkable. With a ruined wing and a plane on the verge of structural failure, he turns into the attack. He hauls the stick back and kicks the rudder toward the damaged side. It's a suicide maneuver. The drag on the damaged wing should flip him instantly. But Johnson knows this machine. He knows that the Spitfire is more than metal and rivets. It has a soul. The sudden, violent yaw throws off the German's aim. The Messerschmitt overshoots, roaring past Johnson's canopy so close he can see the pilot's head turn in surprise. Johnson dives. He pushes the nose down, screaming toward the cloud deck below. The airframe shudders violently, the wind whistling through the gaping hole in the wing like a demonic flute. 10,000 feet. The vibration is blurring his vision. He can't read the gauges. He has to fly by feel, by the seat of his pants. Every muscle in his upper body is locked, fighting the torque that wants to roll the plane into the ground. He hits the clouds. A wet, grey blanket wraps around the canopy. Visibility drops to 0. For a moment, he is safe from the enemy guns. But now he faces a new terror. He is flying blind, in a crippled aircraft, disoriented, with no horizon. If he banks too hard, the wing snaps. If he slows down, he stalls and spins. If he goes too fast, the drag rips the wing off. He is trapped in a precarious, mathematical box of death. He bursts out of the bottom of the cloud layer at 4,000 feet. The ground is rushing up to meet him. Hedgerows, farmhouses, trees. He is too low, much too low. He scans the horizon frantically. He needs a runway, a field, anything flat. There, 3 miles out at his 2 o'clock, an emergency airstrip. It's barely a strip, just a widened stretch of grass near a forward command post. But there's a problem. Between him and that strip is a dense line of poplars and a church steeple. And his landing gear indicators are dark. He has no idea if his wheels are down or if they've been shot away. He has one shot. No go around. No second chances. The engine coughs. A puff of black smoke erupts from the cowling. Oil splatters across the windscreen, obscuring his forward view. He is blind. He is crippled. He is carrying the secrets of the Battle of Britain in a black box by his knee, and the ground is 5 seconds away. The cockpit is a blur of brown sludge. Hot oil is smeared across the windscreen, thick and opaque. It's like trying to drive a car at 300 miles per hour with a blindfold on. In Squadron Leader, Johnson can't see the runway. He can't see the trees. He can't see the church steeple that is currently rising up to swat him out of the sky. He is flying entirely on instinct and side vision. He cranks his head to the left, peering out the side canopy. trying to triangulate his position against the rushing blur of the English countryside. The Merlin engine is dying. The rhythmic roar has disintegrated into a sickening, metallic coughing fit. The propeller is losing bite. The aircraft is heavy, sluggish, and unresponsive. He needs to lose altitude, but he can't dip the nose too low or he'll pick up too much speed and shear the wing off. He can't pull up or he'll stall. He has to thread a needle that doesn't exist. "Come on, old girl." He grunts, his voice tight. "Don't quit on me now." He reaches for the landing gear lever. With the hydraulics likely severed, he bypasses the standard selector and goes straight for the emergency system. Compressed carbon dioxide bottle designed to blow the wheels down when all else fails. He yanks the toggle. TUMP, HMP. Two heavy vibrations shudder through the airframe. The indicators remain dark. Are they locked? Is one stuck halfway? If he touches down with one wheel up and one wheel down, the Spitfire will cartwheel. The fuel tanks in the wings will rupture. The explosion will be visible from France. But he has no choice. The ground is rising fast, 400 feet. He has to perform a side slip, a maneuver where the pilot crosses the controls, banking one way while kicking the rudder the other way. It forces the plane to fly sideways through the air, increasing drag to drop altitude without gaining speed. It also allows him to look out the side window to see where he's going. It's a standard move in a healthy plane. In a Spitfire with a shattered wing spar, it is madness. Johnson kicks the left rudder and pushes the stick right. The damaged wing screams. You can hear the rivets popping, sharp snaps like pistol shots over the sound of the wind. The hole in the wing acts like a massive air brake, dragging the nose violently to the right. He wrestles the stick, his biceps burning. He is fighting the physics of a crash in real time. Through the side plexiglass, the church steeple flashes past. He misses the stone cross by less than 20 feet. He is so close he can see the individual slate tiles on the roof. Now, the trees. The poplars lining the field. He is coming in too hot. The airspeed indicator is useless, bouncing around 0. But the rush of the ground tells him he's doing at least 120 knots. Get down, he whispers. He eases the stick forward, then hauls it back into his gut to flare for landing. The wheels skim the top of the hedge. CRACK. Branches whip against the undercarriage, tearing away radio antennae and pitot tubes. The ground rushes up. Slam. The Spitfire hits the grass. It doesn't glide. It collides with the earth. The landing gear holds for a split second, screaming in protest. Then, the uneven drag takes over. The right wing, the shattered one, dips. The wingtip catches the turf. The world instantly turns into a violent centrifuge. The aircraft violently ground loops, spinning around its own axis. The force throws Johnson's head against the canopy frame. The noise is a chaotic symphony of tearing metal and churning earth. Dirt, grass, and stones are thrown high into the air. The propeller strikes the ground, the wooden blades shattering into splinters that fly like shrapnel. The engine seizes with a final, horrific grind. The Spitfire slides sideways, gouging a deep trench in the airfield, a cloud of dust and blue smoke swallowing it whole. And then, silence, absolute ringing silence. The only sound is the tick, tick, tick of the cooling metal and the hiss of steam escaping the fractured radiator. Inside the cockpit, Johnson hangs limp in his harness. Blood trickles from a cut above his eye, mixing with the sweat and oil on his face. For 10 seconds, nothing moves. From the edge of the airfield, ground crews are already sprinting. The crash truck siren begins to wail, a rising mournful note in the afternoon air. They know what usually happens next. Fire. High-octane fuel on a hot engine block is a ticking time bomb. Johnson's eyes flutter open. His vision is swimming. His left arm is numb. He smells it immediately. The sweet, cloying scent of 100-octane fuel. A tank has ruptured. Panic cuts through the concussion fog. He fumbles for the canopy release. It's jammed. The frame has twisted in the crash. He hammers on the plexiglass with his good fist, screaming in frustration. But the sound is swallowed by the thick glass. He looks down. The black canister. The telemetry unit. It's still there, bolted to the floor, seemingly intact. But a pool of liquid is spreading around his boots, creeping toward the electrical wiring under the dash. He has to get out. Now, he braces his back against the seat, plants his feet against the instrument panel, and pushes with every ounce of hysterical strength he has left. Screech. The canopy slides back 3 inches. Just enough. He jams his elbow into the gap and levers it open. He unbuckles his harness, gasping for air. He doesn't climb out. He falls out, tumbling onto the wing root and sliding down to the grass. His legs give way, and he collapses onto the damp English soil. "Get away, sir!" "She's gonna blow." Anna Sargent is running toward him, waving his arms, his face a mask of terror. Johnson looks back at the plane. It's a wreck. The beautiful elliptical wing is mangled, looking like a bird that has been mauled by a cat. Smoke is beginning to curl lazily from the engine cowling. The box. Johnson wheezes, pointing a shaking finger back at the cockpit. "Get the box." The sergeant freezes. He looks at the smoking plane, then at the pilot. "Sir, it's leaking fuel everywhere." "I don't care," Johnson barks, finding his command voice despite the pain. There is a black canister under the starboard panel. "Get it. Now." "That is an order." The sergeant hesitates for a heartbeat, looking at the wisp of smoke turning into a flame near the exhaust stack. Then he bolts forward. He scrambles up the wing of the burning plane, diving into the cockpit. Johnson watches, holding his breath. The seconds stretch out, agonizingly long. A flicker of orange flame licks out from the engine vents. "Come on," Johnson whispers. The sergeant emerges, coughing, clutching the heavy, black steel box to his chest like a baby. He jumps from the wing and sprints away, his boots pounding the turf. He makes it 10 yards before the Spitfire sighs, a whoosh of air, followed by a dull roar as the fuel vapors ignite. The cockpit is instantly engulfed in a ball of fire. The heat washes over Johnson's face, singeing his eyebrows. If the sergeant had been 5 seconds slower, he would have been cremated. The ground crew drags Johnson back, further away from the inferno. He sits up, pushing them away, his eyes locked on the sergeant, who is now kneeling on the grass, panting, the black box safe in his lap. Johnson crawls over to him. He wipes the oil from his eyes and places a hand on the warm metal of the canister. It's dented, scratched. But it's whole. The secrets inside, the frequency codes, the radar signatures, the map of the German electronic eyes, are safe. Johnson leans back, lying flat on the grass, staring up at the grey sky he just fell from. His body begins to shake, the delayed shock setting in. A medic is kneeling beside him now, checking his pupils, cutting away his flight suit to check for broken bones. "You're a lucky man, Squadron Leader," the medic says, shaking his head at the burning wreckage. "That thing is a total write-off. You shouldn't have walked away from that." Johnson manages a weak, crooked smile. "She brought me home," he whispers. But as the adrenaline fades, a new reality sets in. The physical battle is over, but the war for intelligence is just beginning. A dark sedan tears across the grass, skidding to a halt near the ambulance. Two men in dark trench coats step out. They aren't RAF ground crew. They aren't medics. They are intelligence officers. MI6. One of them walks straight to the sergeant, taking the black box without a word. The other walks over to Johnson. He doesn't ask if Johnson is hurt. He doesn't offer water. He looks down at the pilot with cold, hard eyes. "Squadron Leader Johnson?" The man asks. "Yes," Johnson croaks. "You were over the pass, D. Calais sector, before you were hit." "Correct." "Wes." The man nods, looking back at the burning plane, then at the black box being loaded into the car. "Then you didn't just bring back data, Johnson?" The man says quietly, his voice dropping so the medics can't hear. "You brought back a ghost." Johnson frowns, confused. "What?" "Vic, the sensor readings you captured, they aren't just radar frequencies." The agent says, leaning in close. "We've been monitoring the signal bursts. What you have in that box proves that the Germans aren't just building a radar wall." The agent pauses, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "They're building a guidance system, a beam, to guide bombers at night with perfect accuracy. And if you hadn't landed that plane, London would be burning by Christmas." Johnson stares at the man. The pain in his arm vanishes. The weight of what he just did crashes down on him. He didn't just save a plane. He didn't just save himself. He just stole the blueprint for the Blitz. September 15th, 1940, 6:00 p.m. 4 hours after the crash. Deep beneath the streets of London. The Air Ministry. The air down here is different. It doesn't smell of burning fuel or damp grass. It smells of stale tobacco smoke, wet wool, and the ozone hum of teleprinters. The room is windowless. The walls are covered in maps. Huge. Sprawling charts of the British Isles and northern France, stuck with hundreds of coloured pins. In the centre of the room, under the harsh glare of an incandescent bulb, sits the black canister. It looks out of place on the polished oak table. It is scarred, dented, and streaked with the soot of the fire that consumed Jimmy Johnson's Spitfire. It looks like a piece of debris from a scrapyard. But the men standing around it are treating it like a holy relic. Squadron Leader Johnson stands in the corner, leaning against a filing cabinet. He has been patched up. A white bandage is taped over his left eyebrow. His flight suit has been replaced by a rough wool blanket draped over his shoulders, and he holds a mug of tea that has long since gone cold. He feels like a ghost in his own life. His ears are still ringing from the explosion. His hands are still trembling slightly, a tremor he can't seem to stop. Is the film intact? The question comes from a man in a rumpled tweed suit. He doesn't look like a soldier. He looks like a physics professor who slept in his office. This is Dr. R.V. Jones, the 28-year-old scientific wonderkind tasked with solving a riddle that is baffling British intelligence. A technician, wearing white cotton gloves, carefully unscrews the battered casing of the canister. The metal screeches, a reminder of the violence of the crash. Johnson holds his breath. If the impact shattered the internal recording drum, or if the heat fogged the film, the crash was for nothing. The terrifying descent, the fire, the sergeant risking his life, all for nothing. The technician pulls out a spool of wire and a strip of photographic film. He holds it up to the light. It's readable, sir. The casing held. Though the tension in the room snaps like a rubber band. Dr. Jones snatches the spool, not with the reverence of a priest, but with the hunger of a predator. He rushes it to a light box on the far wall. Lights. Jones barks. The room plunges into darkness, illuminated only by the backlight of the viewing table. Johnson steps forward, drawn by a curiosity that overrides his exhaustion. He looks over the scientist's shoulder. What he sees looks like nonsense. Jagged white lines oscillating across a black grid. Sine waves. Static bursts. To a pilot, it looks like noise. But to Dr. Jones, it is a confession. Look at that. Jones whispers, his finger tracing a sharp spike in the wave pattern. Do you see the frequency modulation? 30 megahertz, just where we suspected. What am I looking at? Johnson asks, his voice rasping in the quiet room. Jones turns, his glasses reflecting the jagged light of the data. You're looking at a road, Squadron Leader. A road in the sky. Joel Jones grabs a grease pencil and begins to draw on the glass over the map of England. The Germans call it Knickebein. The crooked ledge. We've suspected it for months, but we had no proof. Until you brought us this. Orn Jones draws a straight line originating from a transmitter in Cleve, Germany, slicing across the North Sea and cutting directly over the industrial heartland of England. They project a radio beam. Jones explains, his hands moving rapidly. A narrow, focused signal. As long as the German bomber pilot hears a steady tone in his headset, he knows he is on the beam. He doesn't need to see the ground. He doesn't need stars. He doesn't need a navigator. Orn Jones draws a second line, originating from a different transmitter in occupied France. This line intersects the first one directly over a specific point on the map, the city of Coventry. Where the two beams cross. Jones says, tapping the X on the map, the pilot hears a specific signal change. Dots merge into dashes. That is the drop point. They push a button and the bombs fall. It is mathematics replacing vision. The room goes silent. The implication hangs heavy in the stale air. Johnson stares at the X on the map. He thinks about the cloud layer he dove through earlier that day. The soup. The blindness. For centuries, bad weather was the defender's greatest ally. Fog. Rain and darkness were the cloak that hid cities from destruction. If you couldn't see the target, you couldn't hit it. They can bomb through the clouds. Johnson realizes aloud, they can bomb at night, with pinpoint accuracy. Yes, Jones replies grimly. They don't need to see London to burn it. They just need to fly down the road we can't see. This is the shift. The pivot point of the entire war. The Battle of Britain had been fought by men like Johnson. Knights justing in the sun, visible, visceral, man against man. But the recording in that black box proves that the war is changing. It is becoming an invisible war of electrons, beams, and counter-measures. A dark, cold war where death comes from a math equation. If you hadn't brought this back, the MI6 agent from the airfield speaks up from the shadows. We would be guessing. We would be tuning our listening stations to the wrong frequencies. By the time we found the beams, thousands would be dead. Johnson looks at the jagged white line on the film again. That little spike of static. That was the thing that nearly killed him. That was the thing worth dying for. Dr. Jones stands up, wiping the grease pencil from his hands. He looks energized, manic even. But now we know the frequency. Jones says, a tight, dangerous smile forming. And because we know the frequency, we can bend the beam. He looks at Johnson. We can build jammers. We can broadcast a false signal on the same wavelength. We can make the German pilots hear the on-course tone when they are actually drifting miles off target. We can make them drop their bombs on empty fields in the countryside instead of factories. A Jones laughs, a short, sharp sound. We won't just blind them, Squadron Leader. We will lie to them. Oh, Johnson leans back against the table, the adrenaline finally leaving his system, replaced by a bone, deep weariness. He thinks of his Spitfire, burning in a field in Kent. He thinks of the hole in the wing. He thinks of the moment he almost bailed out. He realizes now that the decision to stay in the cockpit wasn't just an act of bravery. It was an act of history. If he had jumped, the Knickebein secret would have remained a rumor. The Luftwaffe would have razed the industrial Midlands and London with impunity. The RAF, already stretched to the breaking point, would have been bombed out of existence on the ground. You should get some sleep, Johnson. The MI6 agent says, his tone softer now, almost respectful. You've done your bit. The boffins will take it from here. Joe Johnson nods. He pushes himself off the table. He walks toward the heavy steel door, but before he leaves, he turns back. Dr. Jones. The scientist looks up from his calculations. Make sure they miss, Johnson says. Make sure they miss everything. Jones nods solemnly. We will. Johnson walks out into the corridor. The hallway is long and dimly lit, filled with the hurried footsteps of clerks and officers carrying files. He walks up the stairs, flight after flight, until he pushes open the heavy doors and steps out onto the street in Whitehall. It is night now. The blackout is in effect. London is pitch black. No streetlights. No car headlights. Just a heavy, suffocating darkness. He looks up at the sky. Somewhere up there, thousands of feet above the city, invisible radio waves are crisscrossing in the dark, hunting for a target. The beams are on. The enemy is listening. But now, thanks to a shattered wing and a refusal to quit, the British are listening back. Johnson pulls his blanket tighter around his shoulders. He begins to walk toward the tube station. He needs to get back to his squadron. He needs to find another plane. Because tomorrow the sun will come up, and the Luftwaffe will be back. 1 week later, RAF Biggin Hill, Kent. Squadron Leader James Johnson is sitting on the edge of a canvas cot in the ready room. He has a clean bill of health. A severe concussion and deep bruising, nothing more. His uniform is starched and pressed. He looks the part of a battle-hardened ace, but he feels empty. He is a pilot without a plane. The air at Biggin Hill is thick with anticipation and a sense of quiet triumph. The intense daylight attacks of early September have given way to something new, something baffling, something that Johnson understands better than anyone in the squadron. The night bombing raids, the beginnings of the devastating Blitz, are still happening. But the results are wildly inconsistent. The Jerrys are losing their nerve, Jim. An adjacent pilot, Flying Officer Miller, remarks, cleaning the perspex of his own Spitfire's canopy. Half their stick is landing in the Thames estuary. Yesterday, they blew up a perfectly good field of turnips near Chelmsford. The pilots chuckle. They think it's Luftwaffe incompetence. They think the German navigators are tired or drunk. Johnson says nothing. He knows the truth. He knows that in the concrete bunkers beneath London, Dr. R.V. Jones and his team of scientists, the boffins, have already begun bending the beam. They have deployed the countermeasures derived directly from Johnson's bruised black box. They are broadcasting false radio signals, subtle electronic whispers that are diverting the German bombers. Miles off course. The precision targeting system of the Knickebein is being fed a subtle, technological lie. The physical bravery of the Battle of Britain is transitioning into the brilliant, cold calculus of the electronic war. And Johnson's impossible landing was the necessary catalyst. He is the quiet hero of the invisible battle. But he still can't shake the image of the fire. He is assigned a new aircraft, a Supermarine Spitfire Mk I, code JEJ. It's a flawless machine, slightly faster, with a more powerful engine. It is pristine, untouched by the war. Before his first flight, Johnson asks the station commander for a favor. He needs to see the wreck. He is driven to a salvage yard near the airfield, a desolate place where the broken wings of heroes and the twisted frames of German invaders are separated, categorized and prepared for recycling. There, sitting on a patch of oil-soaked gravel, is the skeletal remains of his old Spitfire KWJ. It is unrecognizable. The nose is smashed. The tail fin is riddled with holes. The fuselage is peeled open like a tin can. It is a monument to the violence of the impact and the inferno that followed. Johnson walks slowly toward it. The sight is jarring. The machine that protected him, that refused to die, is now nothing but raw scrap. He stops before the starboard wing. This is the physical manifestation of his choice. The damage is incredible. The jagged cavity where the 20 mm cannon shell struck is surrounded by crumpled, blackened metal. The aileron hinge, which should have failed immediately, is somehow still marginally attached to a sheared spar. The structural geometry of the wing had been completely compromised. Any sudden application of force, any normal landing, should have caused a structural failure, sending the plane into a terminal flat spin. He traces the line of the metal with his finger. It wasn't just his skill. It was the resilience of the Spitfire design, pushed beyond its tolerances. It was the calculated madness of his asymmetric descent. It was the desperate physics of courage. The salvage master approaches him, chewing on an unlit pipe. Terrible waste. Squadron leader. Will strip the engine block, but the rest is bound for the smelter. No. Johnson says, his eyes still fixed on the wing. The wing. That section. Is it possible to cut that damaged portion out and keep it? The salvage master looks at the horrific gash, then back at Johnson. He understands immediately. You want a relic, sir? I want a lesson, Johnson replies. Something to remind the pilots what the aircraft is capable of, even when logic says it should quit. The salvage master nods. Consider it done, squadron leader. And days later, the damaged wing section arrives back at Biggin Hill. It is cleaned, stabilized, and mounted in a place of honor. Not in a museum, but in the heart of the fight, the newly constructed mess hall. It is presented as an artifact of defiant refusal. The jagged, blackened hole serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the impossible maneuver is the only way home. It became known among the new intake of pilots simply as Jimmy's geometry. The physical proof that the Spitfire and its pilot were capable of surviving equations that promised only death. Johnson flies his new Spitfire JEJ into the thickening cloud of the invisible war. He knows that his legendary feat, the daring, impossible landing, did not just save one aircraft and one man. It saved the intelligence that enabled Britain to counter the electronic dagger aimed at its heart. The physical of courage had become a strategic victory. The damaged wing, hanging silent in the mess hall, was a testament to the ingenuity required to face impossible odds, and the symbol of the moment the tide turned in the Battle of the Beams. The legend of Squadron Leader. Jimmy Johnson was not just about fighting the enemy. It was about beating the science of defeat itself.